Welcome to the Art of Quantum Healing, where we speak about trauma, mental health and healing. I am your host, Lisa Nadler, and I'm thrilled to have you come into my energetic field. In this podcast, I will be sharing my own personal experiences to guide, teach, and help pave the way. We'll also be welcoming so many other divine souls who have overcome trauma and found happiness, health, wealth, and next level abundance through mind, body, and soul connection. My mission is to help women high vibe and thrive with inner peace, passion, and purpose.
Welcome to the Art of Quantum Healing. Today we have another phenomenal guest joining us, and it's the wonderful Jenna. Now we're going to be going really deep on domestic violence, PTSD after being a police officer, and childhood trauma up to the age of 12 that had such a profound effect in her life. And she didn't realise until she looked back and realised the actual impact it made. So welcome, Gemma. Welcome. Jenna.
Thank you.
God, Gemma.
It's all right. Do you know I've actually been called Gemma my whole life, and now
really?
Yeah. So don't worry.
I'm channeling the Gemma.
It's totally fine.
I'm really bad with names, I have to say. I really am. So I'm just going to read you a little bit about Jenna. So Jenna has survived multiple traumas through her 33 years and is now studying mental health. So she can use her life experiences in a way to support others and empower them that they can heal and live a life of meaning and purpose. Jenna's trauma journey started when she was 9 years old, when she found her neighbour murdered. She then went on to become a police officer before going to prison, and then most recently experiencing domestic violence. Even though Jenna has had her fair share of trauma, she has continued to thrive on her healing journey and does not let her past define her. That's one of my favorite things, my quote, your past does not define your future. I love that. Jenna believes that you can change your story, you can change your life. Abso-fucking-lutely. Welcome, gorgeous. Even though we started talking before this, and we were talking for like 20 minutes, and then we went, shit, we gotta start.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And you're in the beautiful Gold Coast right now?
Yes, I am, and it's not so sunny today, but hopefully it'll turn around soon.
We're sunny up in Bribey, so I'll send you some, babe.
Yes, please. I need sunshine in order to get through my day.
Yeah. So I would love for you just to share a little bit about your journey. I know that your journey, as I said to you when we were talking before, this could probably will be a 3-part series, because you've gone through some very pivotal things in your life that really impacted, and they're very different and they're very unique to. It's not just like domestic violence. There's 3 different aspects that had such a huge impact. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, definitely. So I think with me having gone through what I went through at 9 and finding my neighbor's murdered body was definitely the start of my trauma journey. And, I come from a good family and a good neighborhood. So this happening was just very, left-centered. And when I came home, I actually explained it to Mum that he wasn't well and there was red wine all over the walls. And of course, Mum, a 9-year-old coming home expressing that to her, thought, oh, okay, well, maybe Ron's just had a big night and, dropped the red wine and passed out. And yeah, it was like a few days later when the police found him, and yeah, he'd been shot 3 times in the head. So
he got murdered.
Yeah, he was murdered.
Oh, wow. So you didn't just find him with a heart attack good grief.
Yeah,
psychologically.
So I think from there, because I wasn't able to process it, and my parents did the best they could with the resources they had, and sent me to school, and I didn't have counseling or anything like that. I obviously suppressed it.
Yeah.
And then going through my teenage years, I had a lot of self-harm. I wasn't very good with friendships, relationships, boundaries, and all of that. So that really impacted my school life. I went to, I think, 3 different schools. But at the end of it, I just wanted to become a police officer. So I did everything in my power to become a police officer. I got my black belt in Kyokushin, which is street fighting. I volunteered for the SES. I volunteered for the Police Boys Club because I just wanted to be a cop. And now I think back and I go, you shouldn't have done that. But so I graduated the police academy at 19, and I was a baby and got put into a category 1 station in Sydney. And from there, I unfortunately witnessed a whole bunch of stuff, from murders to horrific suicides to motor vehicle accidents to all of the stuff a 20-year-old brain probably shouldn't see. Yeah. And again, wasn't quite equipped to handle it properly in the police force. And I, started having all these images of when I was 9 come back. And because I didn't understand it, I started to drink and I started to self-medicate with prescription meds because I just couldn't sleep. And I'd had insomnia growing up, but I didn't know what it was. I used to just sneak out my bedroom window and just go for walks in the street because I just couldn't sleep. And Mum caught me one time, and that's a story for another day. Oh
no! Now you go, what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? But I forgive myself for everything that I've put my parents through now, because I realized it wasn't my fault. Being in the police force and having experienced all of that as a young 20-year-old, and then relating it back to my childhood trauma, I just was out of control and I spiraled, and I definitely had no sense of how to set boundaries when it came to men, because I believe that my main trauma response that I experience is the whole fawning. So, lack of boundaries, put other people's values before my own, have no self-worth and all of that. Which then led me to start dating someone from a crime family. And I did a favor for him that I really shouldn't have. And it ended the relationship. But unfortunately, 3.5 years after the fact, it came up. And I got sentenced to 12 months in a maximum security prison. So, yeah.
Police officer.
Ooh. Yeah, police officer in a women's prison wasn't fun.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Was there anyone there that you'd actually put into jail?
There was one girl, but she got moved prisons quite quickly. But for the first 3 months of my sentence, they chose to keep me in a segregation cell. Yeah. So even though that's where you would go if you've done the wrong thing inside, they put me in there for my protection. And that was probably the hardest 3 months in my life, in the sense that I hadn't truly accepted that I should be there, because it was never an option going through the courts. I always thought I was going to get community service. So when I went in for sentencing that day, it was just like, bam, you're going to prison. So I wasn't prepared. So that initial time in there, I really struggled because I hadn't accepted myself for what I'd done, or accepted that I needed to be there. So I started to go a bit crazy in there, and I had zero communication. I only had an hour of sunlight a day. So all of that on top of, not accepting and acknowledging my part in this, was quite damaging to my mental health.
And how old were you then?
24.
So you're a 24-year-old still unprocessed of all the trauma that's happened in your life. Because there was other things, wasn't there too, just to touch on. You're also, by the age of before 10, you were sexually abused and you witnessed a hostage bank robbery.
Yeah, sorry.
What the fuck? Let's just throw some more stuff in there. Holy moly.
Yeah, I think, and still with that, I think I put it in there because, yes, it has happened. Can I say that it's affected me day to day? The bank hostage thing, probably, maybe I haven't processed or dealt with it as much, or maybe I wasn't put in fear as much as what I possibly could be. When I talk about the child sexual assault, that didn't actually come into my brain, and my memory, until I was about 24 or 23.
Amazing what you suppress for protection.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I don't really talk about that as much is because I'm not 100% confident with like all of the details. I know it happened. I know who did it, but I don't feel like I have that permission to be able to tell that story to its full extent, because I think I'm still blocking it out. But it did happen. And I've acknowledged that it happened. And then I found out that that man had also attempted to do it to 2 other girls my age. So that sort of gave me the validation that I needed, that it did happen.
And we tend to block out stuff like that because at the time we're only given as much as what we need to handle and process in that moment. And so when the time comes right, and if it comes right, maybe it won't, maybe it's something that you don't actually need to. You've actually cleared through your soul's journey as you've been going. So yeah, interesting. Wow. And that's a lot for 14.
Yeah. And that's why.
Sorry, go.
Okay.
No, you go.
No,
No, you go first. No, you hang up.
I was just going to say that although that has probably been a big contribution to my fawning response, it hasn't affected my ability in the bedroom. Like it's never affected me sexually, which I know a lot of sexual abuse victims do suffer from. Yes, I don't know how to set boundaries, and yes, I let men walk all over me and treat me like shit, but it's never been an issue for me to,
which is a blessing. Real blessing.
I'm very, very thankful for that.
Yeah.
So
so you're sitting in the cell and you have got all this unprocessed things that have happened throughout your life, plus you've got the blame, shame and guilt suppressed inside of you for what actually happened, and you're still trying to take ownership of that because we don't want to, right? We're like, no, that was not. So you're unraveling that, and you're by yourself for what, 23 hours a day, going out for 1 hour of exercise.
Yeah.
Good fucking God. How did you get through that, love? Because that is for anybody. I mean, I always say we're never given more than we can handle, but that's a lot to be sitting in that space with no support, no love, no one just saying to you it's okay. Like you're sitting there. That's a lot. How did you process that?
I think with me, I've always been extremely resilient, and I've never allowed anything to completely knock me down. Like I'll always find something just clicks in my brain and goes, come on, girl, you've got to find a way. And I even remember when they told me that I was going to prison, I just remember sitting in that cell at the court going, there's no way out. You just have to find a way. And then when I was in there, I think I was just really blessed that 80% of the guards in the prison were quite good to me because I was an ex-cop, and a lot of people didn't agree with me going to prison because story for another day. And in fact, my family was so amazing, and they saw that I was this beautiful girl that shouldn't be in there.
And made a mistake. I made a horrible place. You did it from a place of love, believe it or not, you know.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
So I think being in there, I journaled every day. I wrote down everything. I read a book, which I'd never done before.
I loved it when you said, what did you say? You said, I journaled. I wrote it down. It was so cool. You wrote it. You said it. I journaled my. I journal your days and process your past. I loved that. I was like, that just encapsulates a start of a healing journey, and the possibility of becoming aware of the process, the thought. I love that.
100%. Because I find even now we get so caught up with the thoughts in our head, and we go round and round and round and round. My therapist, I say to her, can I just brain dump because my head is just going da 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 da.
Which is what journaling is, right?
It's fine. Once I write it down or I speak it out aloud, I'm like, oh, okay, that's done. We can put that aside. Or that day has happened and let's just write it off or write it down and move on to the next day. And I did count every day in there. Some people said to count up and then count down, like go half to your sentence and then count back. For me, all the girls had like their own little strategies in there on how to get through jail. So I did that, but then I found for me it was better to just keep going to the 365 days. I felt like I'd be going up and then going backwards. That was just how my brain thought.
Mentally, that helped you actually move closer and closer to
every day I wrote down, okay, it's Monday, such and such a date, day 14. And I was like, okay, I'm getting closer. But I think the most interesting thing, and I've spoken about this before, what really helped me heal in prison was knowing that I was no different to anyone else in there. So regardless if I had come from the good family and the good job and, you know, all of that, I was in prison with these other women. I was no different to them. And I really learned how to not judge a person and judge a person's story, and everyone's trauma. Most of the women in there were in there for trauma, or they'd experienced childhood things which led them to being in there, same as me. And I always say, like, I can hand on heart say at least 90% of the women in there were in there for men, or a crime that they'd done with a man, or a crime, a crime they covered up from a man. And then I had this light bulb moment and went, you're in here for a man too. So
Isn't it funny that we do things that we would never normally do just because we want to belong? It's our primary fear, is fitting in and belonging and being loved. So, when you suffer through trauma in an early part of your life or even later on life, you have these different imbalances that make you just want to do what you need to do just to feel loved, to feel secure. Yeah. It's fascinating. Look back and go, what the fuck was I thinking? I know. I think about that with my drug days, I'm like, really? You did what? Seriously? Oh my God, what is wrong with you? But for me, I felt loved. I felt cared for. I felt secure. I felt I belonged. It was, my worthiness. It was just, it's interesting, isn't it? So,
and when you look back as well, you can probably appreciate as well all those bad mistakes or bad habits that we made. It got us through till the next day. We survived.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes
and as you said before, I don't regret a thing, and I'm exactly the same. I don't regret a thing because it's brought me to who the person I am today, and I love who I am. It's taken a long time to get here, and I still have moments of but so tell me, when you were a police officer and you were, because I've actually got a couple of very good friends and clients that I have actually treated with PTSD, which is which is exactly what you have, and they say that that when they went through police college, they were taught, and you actually do put somebody in a box. You do actually not judge them, but you have to do analysis to actually say, well, this person is like this. And so it is a form of judging, because that's your job. You've got to make sure where you're walking into a certain area. You've got to be on high demand. This person's here because she's smokes crack or whatever it may be. And then to come into and be with the woman that you had. How was that to then sit back and go, I have no fucking judgment on these people? Was that hard to switch from what you'd been taught? Because you're really taught it, aren't you? Because it's survival for you.
I think what I found really hard was that I wasn't just put in there with women who were in there for drugs or were in there for, armed robberies, or I was living with the child murderers and the female pedophiles. So
you're in heavy security, the heavy prison.
Yeah. So I think that I really struggled with, because I don't align with obviously their crimes. I understand the other stuff's still bad, that, doing armed robberies and all of that, but you haven't, inflicted serious harm on someone.
Yeah, that takes to a whole new level.
Yeah, so I did find that I was quite isolated from them. Yeah. But then after a while, I went, Jenna, you need connection with someone. You can't do this whole 12 months on your own. And there was a whole level of fear for my safety as well, because I was a cop and I didn't want to engage with some of the child killers and pedophiles in there. Yeah. Some of them are quite well known and have Netflix series at the moment, and they are just pure evil. Yeah. So I just couldn't lower myself to be friends with them just to survive.
Here's boundaries. Well done. Hallelujah.
But there was one girl in there who was also a child murderer, but her story on how she got there was completely different to the others. It was not premeditated. I'm not condoning what she'd done, but it was an accident. It was what she did with the body after that had the whole of Australia in, absolute tears. But she showed remorse every single day, and she cried every single day. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to have to pick the best of a bunch that I wouldn't normally, she was the person that I chose. And we had a relationship that it took my parents a long time to understand why I could be friends with her. But you just needed someone to connect with, and especially being someone like me who has just come in there, who was severely codependent, thrived on having connection, which is how I got through my day. Like I couldn't even, I'd always be on the phone, or I'd always be texting, or I'd always be seeing a friend, because I could not stand to be alone. Yeah. So to then being thrown into the worst possible situation to be alone, and then being forced to be around people, and so I really
talk about having to look at your shit.
Yeah, I know, right? So she did help me a lot get through it. And yeah.
Because you also you were undiagnosed PTSD then.
I
So
did get diagnosed with PTSD just before prison.
right.
But I hadn't really done much work on myself. I did a couple of stints in a private mental facility, but going back to what you said, I wasn't ready. And, I didn't come in there and want to learn and want to grow and want to heal because I hadn't accepted that there was anything wrong with me. I was just using it as an excuse at that point. Okay, well, that's why I did that, because I've got this. Like, I didn't actually understand the true meaning of it all. And honestly, it wasn't truly until my domestic violence incident that I've just recently gone through did I truly understand what trauma was and how it fucks you up internally.
And how it reflects everywhere on your life, and you don't even realize your thoughts, your actions, and you just do it on autopilot. It's the deep programming, isn't it?
And now I'm ready. So and I've done so much in the last 7 months and what I've done in the last 10 years. So it's possible.
So how long since you've been out of prison for? How long?
Oh God, 7 years.
7 years. So when you came out, you sort of appeared confident. I'm just reading a bit of that you sent to me. Even though I appeared confident and beautiful, I had no self-worth and I allowed men to use me. I hated not being in control of my head. I couldn't sleep and I was constantly on edge and ruining the relationship I had with my family and friends due to frustration and anger. When was that? Was that when you came out?
No, that was probably from the time I was a teenager right up until the police force, out of prison. That's that inner work that I'd never truly worked on. And like we were saying before we started this, like until you work on that, you're just going to keep attracting the shit. Like I was attracting shit friends, shit men. I would allow, and I have a beautiful family, so they've never really been the issue when it comes to how they've treated me. But I would still allow, people to walk all over me. And it was kind of like I wanted them to treat me like shit. And because it was my way of abusing my body or abusing my soul. So,
and it's also your way of justifying that the stuff that happened to you is normal because it's the sort of person you are. And then you start looking at it. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. And, you said it beautifully when you said before that, once I realized that, oh, this was me, I was here because of me, and I really had to start look at my stuff, then the process started. And what was that process like? Like, because you talk about that you did cognitive behavior therapy and dialectical behavior therapy. What was that like when you started doing that?
Yeah, so when I started that, again, I wasn't 100% ready to heal. So I don't believe it worked for me in that sense that it opened my eyes that I needed therapy 100%, but I was still not ready to heal. And because I've always thought that if I heal, am I still going to be an interesting person? Like, are people still going to want to know me? Because Jenna's the shit magnet, and there's always a good story when Jenna's around.
One of my boyfriends said to me, "You're a fuckwit magnet. There's a fuck within 24 radius. He's attracted to you." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks."
So then I had and I said it to my current psych, who's freaking amazing. I said to her, I was like, I know this might sound really weird, but if I heal and there's nothing wrong in my life, will people still find me interesting?
Because it's part of your identity. It's it forms so much of a powerful thing. If you take that away, and it's like, what you do. You're like, Jimmy, if like, who am I going to be? Who am I actually going to be when I release it? Oh my God. That is why people don't heal, right there in a nutshell, because they're so scared of what's on the other side. And it stops us and stops us and stops us and stops us. It is in a nutshell.
And you know what? As soon as I was vulnerable enough to have those words come out of my mouth, because that's not something you would just openly want to say to someone, let alone
you're a strong woman. That's like,
truth. I would always even I was so conditioned that something was going to go wrong all the time. I would be driving and go, okay, I'm going to have a car accident, because it's just I just thought something bad was going to happen all the time. So that was quite interesting. But I think with that, once the biggest thing was accepting that the domestic violence that I went through with my ex wasn't all his fault.
Yeah.
And I say that, and I know we're all, women's power, and no, it's never your fault, but I take the responsibility that I hated myself so much that I needed to be with a man that equally hated me as much.
Yeah. And you do. You attract it. 100%.
So that's once I acknowledged that it wasn't all his fault and I'm not a victim and I played a role in that sense. It was like this big epiphany. I was saying I went to 1770 and I had the most, because I'm quite spiritual like you. And I just remember going into the water, and the water is a very big thing for me. It helps me release everything. No. And I just remember going into the water at 1770. I'm got goosebumps now. But it was like still air, and I just felt this big gust of wind just come out of nowhere, and I just started crying, and it happened
release.
Yeah, and then I just remember going, I forgive you for everything that you've done for me. I forgive you for being such a shit human, and most of all, I forgave myself. And I came back from my 2-week solo van life thing, and I've just it's beautiful.
And sometimes also when you're feeling like that, and you release, you get those big, like, uncontrollable moments of tears, you don't actually need to attach anything to it. It's just like, this is just me releasing trauma or emotions, which is what trauma is, trapped in my body, that are just leaving me. And oh my God, I love getting in the shower and just getting on the shower and just fucking crying and just uncontrollably crying. I love it because I know when I step up after a little bit, I'm going to feel so amazing because whatever I've needed to release has been released. But I used to be somebody who, if that happened to me, I'd be like, oh, so what is this? Why am I feeling this? Why am I crying? I don't understand what's going on. And I've realized with such beautiful belief that my soul just needed that part to heal. The fragment needed to come home, or perhaps there was something that needed to be released from my body to make way for the light to come in, which is where all the beautifulness, where you can set the boundaries and you can have that groundedness and balance, and you can self-worth, and it's so beautiful.
And he just gets all excited about all this stuff.
So if as you're listening to this, just know that, like Jenna just said, and when she shared that beautiful story about releasing and crying, it's a beautiful thing. We're taught that, anger, actually someone talked to me about anger and sadness. I'm like, anger and sadness is magnificent. It means that your body is ready to process something out. Lean into it. Get angry. Because when we're growing up, it's like, don't you cry, you be strong. Don't you cry, don't you dare.
That tantrum.
It's like, no, have the fucking tantrum. It's the best thing you can do. Boost the energy. So, Can we do a little bit on your domestic violence? So when you came out of, God, it's just so much. We're gonna have to do like a couple of more podcasts so we can just zone in on a few things. If you think it's a good idea, comment below. So when you came out of prison, and then it was about
6 years later.
Later, and then you met a guy, and your next part of your healing journey needed to happen from this.
And that's why I always say that this was the is it pinnacle, or the final moment of Jenna's life, that was the final lesson for now that I needed to learn, was self-love. And I feel like the universe had to put me in a relationship with the most toxic, and I don't just throw around the word narcissist, he was an actual narcissist, borderline psychopath. So I feel like the universe had to throw me the absolute shittiest person and force me to go through that in order for me to go, okay, you need to change now.
Otherwise, guess what's going to happen in a few months' time? You're going to have the same sort of fucking thing happen again and again and again.
Or worse one. But I knew him from like my younger days. So he wasn't just someone random that I'd met. And so I knew his history with drugs, and he'd actually been to prison and stuff like that. So I've always been the girl. Yeah, let's just see how red that flag can get, right? And I've always been that girl.
I love that.
So it's that whole, and I know a lot of trauma survivors can relate with, hey, let's fix them. We'll fix them.
Because really what we're wanting is to fix ourselves, but we're not looking at it. Yeah.
So he was just like, yeah, the biggest red flag. I read a red flag after red flag after red flag, but I just kept throwing myself at the flag. So again, take my part in that.
Yeah.
But it was just a trauma bond from the absolute get-go. Like, he was living in New South Wales. He literally moved to Queensland. We moved in together. I fell pregnant after 4 weeks. And it was just go, 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 go. I started seeing his abuse. Even before he got up there, he came up for a holiday to see if it's really what we wanted. And he lost his shit before he even moved up. And it wasn't physical, but just punching the holes in the walls and the verbal abuse and the screaming and the shouting. So that should have been my big thing then. Like, no.
That was probably like a putting a red flag in front of a bull.
Literally.
Literally.
And then it just kept getting worse. And then I think because I've accepted that behavior, he just went, okay, this is another one that will allow me to behave this way. And then after I lost the first baby, I had an ectopic pregnancy, and the way he was with me after I lost the baby was disgusting, just really abusive. And then throughout our relationship, we did have the good times. Don't get me wrong. It's the old cycle. You have those honeymoon phases, but that cycle just got shorter and shorter and shorter. And it started being every 24 hours, I was either in trouble, I was getting yelled at, it was all my fault, I'm a narcissist, I'm this, I'm that, blah, blah.
Yeah. And that's what happens with a narcissist. When they get you comfortable, they're the most loving person in the world. And it starts getting less and less and less. And then it's your fault. It's always your fault.
It's all your fault. And I did a post the other day around, I took it from someone else. I can't remember what it was, but it was round about that you were always there for their darkest days, but they put you in your darkest day. And there were so many times there where I'm like you, how's this strong, powerful woman, A, end up with someone like this, and B, on the floor questioning if you even want to survive.
Yeah.
And the fact that he put me there was crazy. And then again, have the fun 2 months, I fell pregnant again. And I don't even know how I kept falling pregnant. We were careful. So there's always been this thing in my mind, was he doing something to me when I was anyway?
Yeah, you've done, your brain takes you different places, because it's just
like, how does this happen? How does someone fall pregnant twice in 12 months with a man she does not want a baby with? So anyway, and then the second child I lost again. And that was more horrific for me in the sense that, because I do really want to be a mum, and I was prepared to leave him for the sake of this baby. And I just remember sitting he had me cornered in the walk-in closet, and he just stood over me and was spitting on me. And I just remember begging for the baby's life, like, don't stress me out. And I unfortunately miscarried a few hours after that. And when I was in the hospital, he decided to pick a fight with me and left me in the hospital. So it didn't last long after that. I think I really started detaching myself from him, and I started to pull back because I actually started to hate him, and I resented him for taking away 2 babies that I really wanted. And I blame him. I know there's no medical science behind it, but I blame him. And then in the March this year, I decided to leave, and that all turned to shit. After I left, he went on a 4-day ice bender, which he'd never done ice when he was in the relationship. Well, so I don't think.
You triggered him. Yep.
And then it's my fault again. Remember that?
What? Shame on you. Because no one's accountable for their own actions. They have to blame somebody else, because otherwise, we'd look at our own shit.
And then on the Sunday, I went back because he needed a hug, and I didn't know he'd been on a bender. Keep that in mind.
Oh, so you went there just after 4 days had been up.
Yep. And then I went back there, and no joke, within 10 minutes, he started accusing me of being on Tinder, and not because I was on Tinder. He would be showing me a photo of like an Asian girl, and I'm not Asian. I might have, a bit of slanty eyes, but I'm not Asian. And he'd be like, this is you in the photo. And I'm like, okay, that's when I started to think, with my cop training, you're on ice, you're delusional. You just need to get out of here safe. So I managed to try and calm him down, and I calmed him down for about 5 minutes, and then he just launched at me, started to strangle me. I managed to de-escalate that, and then I went to leave. He wouldn't let me to leave, and then I get mindful about sharing too much because I don't want to trigger people.
Yeah, you don't need to, because I understand that you're still going through this process with Lisa. You don't have to, honey. We don't have to go into it. So
But what I was going to get at was I found a tracking device in my car, and he'd been tracking me for 9 months.
Goodness, your bloody skills from being, you were a policewoman for a reason, right? To help you through those different places. Your skills kicked in. We always do everything in life for a reason. We learn everything and we go through everything, and so that we can, it's fascinating, isn't it?
So that was, I think, what really helped, because obviously when it comes to physical violence, unfortunately, unless you got a black eye or anything like that, the police find it very hard to charge the abuser, and especially when it's a he said, she said. So I've accepted that they couldn't charge him for the assault. However, it was awesome that they could charge him with the stalking, because they proved that he had been doing it for 9 months, because he had to pay a monthly subscription and the money was coming out of his account, and they could see when he was logging in. Charming. So he got charged for that, and then he broke the protection order 8 or 9 times, and he's been charged and sentenced for that. So I was really happy with the outcome. And I'm just, you know what, to any survivor and any DV victim that has never, and I understand why a lot of women don't go to the police, but if you ever have the strength to do it, like, it's that feeling the day I found out he got sentenced was the best amazing
in the world.
I won.
Because then also you won, and you couldn't do it to anybody else.
No. I found out, and what gave me the strength was I found out I was number 6, and he'd done it to other women and actually served time in prison, which I didn't know about, for another woman. Was told by a friend, but at that point you don't want to believe it. So I always have to apologize.
Well, you can change, you can change it. I can change him. It's okay. He's never loved anyone like he's loved me before.
Yeah, correct.
We want to belong. We want to be loved. It's that survival instinct again, Wow. Tell me, in it you said that you did eye movement therapy after the domestic violence happened, and especially you're going through the actual stuff of it. You actually, I've never actually heard of. Please share. I'd love to know what it is.
Called EMDR, so eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. I always get it wrong, but just Google EMDR.
Big one, love. I was writing it down going EDMR.
But it changed my life. Like, I was so blessed that throughout this experience in the last 12 months, my ex had me so convinced that I had multiple personalities that I needed to see a therapist. So I started to see a therapist, and she has been my freaking angel and my angel wings, because she what got me through all of this, and started EMDR with me as soon as I left the relationship, like literally 2 days after. We started it, and we did a session every week for about 8 weeks. And basically it's really hard to explain. She even says to me, it's so hard to explain, you've just got to experience it. And there's different stages to it. So basically it's trying to detach the memory that the brain is holding and putting it in with a new memory. But it does it in a way of, like, you'll sit there and you do the bilateral movement, and while she's moving her fingers, so your eyes are going the other way while your hands are going the other way. So it triggers something in the brain to say that it needs to process. And I know it sounds really hard to understand, but the moments when I was doing it, like, I wouldn't be tired at all, and all of a sudden I would start yawning my head off, or
releasing. Oh my God.
One session I even vomited. Like, it was just
purged. Beautiful.
Yeah. So it really has. And I found that since I've gone through, like, you work on a specific incident. So you want to she'll go, okay, what are we going to work on today? And I'll go, okay, I've got issues with this image of this or this scenario. And then we go through it. And I can hand on heart say, since I've done this 8 to 12 sessions now, I've gone from thinking of him and relating every single thing to him to probably thinking about him a couple of times a day.
Wow.
And I'm not associating traffic lights or street names or, certain things like in the kitchen. Like, I've actually started detaching from him and that trauma bond.
So you're actually reprogramming your logical pathways as well. And your flight, your response to a different emotion. Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
Powerful. Yeah. So it's still, like, it's been around for a long time, but I think people are just starting to learn about it and start to use in their therapies. And I have heard some bad feedback from people.
But you get bad feedback from everything, and not everything's right for people.
it's still a skill that needs to be learned. So if you're going to a therapist that hasn't, learned the skill, or you're not ready, you don't have to blame the other person. You might not be ready and not like, I've really taken it on board. But it honestly has been life-changing. I know we touched on the CBT and the DBT before. It's not as clinical as that. It's more can you say holistic?
It's the real inner, because like I'm a trauma release specialist, this is my jam. Like I love this stuff. And what happens is that when you have that trauma, when you say the trauma that happens, and you'll know this, I'm just trying to maybe explain it in a slightly different way. The trauma that happens, you actually you attach a feeling to what's happening, and that feeling is what, if it's negative or positive, it traps within your body. So that's the shadows and the darkness. So what happens is that when you have that, when you have another feeling that is like it goes to the trauma response. So it goes to that feeling that you had around a similar time. So you've got lots of different trapped emotions that are within your body. So when you start to actually release the trauma from within, it actually starts to, the feeling and the trauma within your body actually disconnect. So the feeling and the thought doesn't connect anymore. So there's no emotional attachment to it. I did this thing called explosive sexual hearing. The hardest fucking thing I've ever done. It was crazy. Like, you release trauma when you're orgasming, and you had a husband and wife in the room, and the guy was actually giving you the orgasm. It was, I've never shared this. It's the first time I've shared this, Gemma.
Wow, thank you.
So and what it was is that you had the feeling, and you kicked and screamed on the bed, and you actually released that emotion out of your body. And it's the same thing with the disconnection of the mind. If you can allow the mind not to be attached to the feelings, you can release the emotion as basic. So what happens is you don't have that response anymore. There's no emotional attachment to your memories. So it's not a trauma, because when something happens and you just simply have a thought about something, and you think, oh God, that time when I saw that person being murdered and I had to go to that scene, and you are actually reliving that time. You're actually having that trauma response again. So even because your eyes and your mind don't understand between what's happened and what hasn't. That's why TV's so fucking bad, because you're actually living that what's happening on the TV. Your body doesn't know. So you're actually, it's why the people are so on edge right now, because of what they're seeing every day. So they're having trauma responses. So what happened? It's also EHT. Have you ever heard of tapping? It's the same. So it reminds me of a little bit of the EMDR that you just spoke about. It's disconnecting the brain as you're doing something else, and it's tapping on certain things. So
fascinating, isn't it? Yeah.
It's crazy, and we have so much trauma. And trauma can be something as simple as you going up to hug your mum, and she's just saying, oh, not right now. And you really needed that hug. Simple. And
that's where I think, and that's where because I get a lot of, with my Instagram account that I've started since this journey, I get a lot of people like reach out to me in DMs, and they don't validate their trauma, and they think, because it's like, from what you just said then, like, they've gone to hug their mum, but the mum said not now. And like, that trauma is anything that makes you feel something that's not, normal. So I think it's a big thing that a lot of people don't validate their own trauma, and then you can't heal.
And you can have something like that happen with your mum, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later, a couple of years later, something happened where you really wanted your partner to hug you and he rejected, and then that then attaches to the first trauma, and you don't even fucking know it, because it's the same emotion that's happening in your body. So then your body actually starts, this is the like unbelievable thing, your body starts searching to fill that feeling, because it's a feeling it now knows. It's now got a belief system all attached to it. And that, like with you, with the domestic violence, you're looking for this person because I need someone that can help me with my trauma stuff, and we can actually understand each other.
Yeah, I know. It's like black hole once, like, say it.
Completely.
And that's why I think the more people that speak up about their experiences, like yourself, and like, I think it helps other people realize, because I go to a domestic violence support group, and there's still so many women in there that are still so angry, and they think it's like all that person's fault, and they've never like looked within and gone, okay, well, why do I had one lady in there saying that she's had 9 domestic violence relationships and 7 children to eat, like, and now her sons are abusers. And I just think,
the cycle.
Like, yeah, right. But it's until we can accept that we play a part in it, we're never going to break the cycle.
Totally, Jenna, totally. And then we just keep repeating it and we keep searching for it, because it's also, you know, and this is leaning more into the spirituality side of it. It's also about the energy and the frequency that you're living in. So if you're living in an energy or frequency of needing to attract that to fulfill a part of you that's not there, because, you know, it's a sort of coping mechanism, you know, like, oh, I need someone to treat me like shit because that's what I'm used to. It's also self-worthiness. It's a whole lot of different things. So you're actually on that frequency, and that's who you're going to attract, because that's the place that you're living. And I've lived in victimhood. Oh my God, my mum, I love her, but she was victim one-on-one. Like, she was, and just so you know, when you're listening to this, if you're wondering, well, how do I know if I'm a victim? The minute you blame an outside thing, person, whatever, then for what's happening within your life, you're in victimhood. The minute you blame somebody or something else for what's happening in your life, you're in victimhood. That's it. And I'm still in victim all the time. Like, oh, it's raining, so I can't go to a walk. Well, no, it's not the rain. You're going to do something else instead. You know, I couldn't do that. I couldn't exercise my body. Exactly. It's like, no, you know, or that person did this to me. No, you need to take responsibility for everything that's happening in your life, good and bad. And that can be a fucking hard thing to look at, especially when you're going through something like we have, you know, sexual abuse or domestic violence, because, well, why in the right mind would I attract that into my life? No, go back further. There's some connection that needs to be healed. Oh, juicy, I got goosebumps all over my body. I love it. So, you know, it's such oh my goodness, like, we could go on and talk for ages. I know. We really could.
I think it's just really important to have, you know, someone like yourself that is doing the trauma release therapy, because it's definitely becoming something that more and more people are speaking about, understanding. And, you know, there are other ways to deal with it other than go to a therapist. And, you know, even this day and age, it's very hard to get into one. Yeah. And it's good that people can acknowledge that there are other ways to release the trauma, and there's no better way to learn from someone that's experienced it.
And exactly. And like you with the mental health stuff you're going to be doing, which I'm Jenna's, I keep going to call you Gemma. Maybe her name should have been Gemma. Jenna's actually at the moment going to be taking, studying mental health. So she's going to be taking, and this is why somebody that has been and walked the path that you have walked is the most incredible person to be your teacher. Because this is another thing, is that we're not healers. We're not healers for you. You heal yourself. We just stand and hold the container for you to be able to open, to release, and to do whatever you need to be. Like, I am not a healer. You are a healer. Everybody is their own healer. And until you take ownership of your healing, then you're going to constantly be a seeker looking for somebody to make you better. And you don't need to be made better. You're whole. You just need to come back to yourself. So
you need to transcribe that part.
Hey? What?
You need to transcribe what you
I like
said.
that. I like that. That was good. How did I channel that? You helped me channel, Jenna. You ground me. It's true though, isn't it? I get so sick of hearing I'm a healer. No, you're not. I can heal. No, sorry, I can heal you. I can heal you. No, you're your own healer. And it's like when you were sitting in by yourself in that isolation for 3 months. You knew that you had nobody else. You had no one to seek. You had no one to ask anything. You had no one to rely on. You had no one to talk to, and you became your own fucking healer.
Yeah.
Look at you now. Look at the journey you're on now. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's magnificent.
It's exciting.
It's exciting. And now you've just been on a 2-week combi caravan life, and that's what I want to do.
That's coming. We've all got to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's just I loved it. Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing everything you're sharing. So is there one thing that you want to leave people with? Is there one tip? Is there one thing that you would, just whatever feels called, that's going to flow through?
I think it's just something that I've always expressed, is that what Tony Robbins says, you change your story, you can change your life. And if you want to be that person that keeps telling the same victim story, you are never going to change your life. And, you know, it's even, that's always just been what has gotten me through, is literally change your story and you can change your life.
Your mantra, right? I read that, your mantra. I love that.
Yeah, love it.
I was saying to you before, my one that I really like is, your past does not define your future, you do. I love that. Yeah. I'm like,
so true.
Huh? What do you mean? Take ownership and, you know, and be vulnerable and just allow yourself to feel what you need to feel. Just let go. you're never given more than your handle, and you can absolutely hold the space for yourself, even though you don't think you are. We don't realize how fucking strong we are. We really are.
Yeah. And I think a big thing, one that I've also learned is, you know, when people say, or this situations or this domestic violence, like whatever it might be, has made me strong. Like, I don't think people realize you already had the strength there. Like, don't give someone validation for giving you that strength. You know, you did that.
Yes, I love that. It's so true. Yes. Cool. All right, then. Well, we're going to sign off now. Even though I don't want to, I think we're going to have the beautiful Jenna back on again to go a little bit deeper onto some things. And I can't wait to watch your journey. And if you want to connect with her, all her details are below. Reach out if you're going through anything and you feel like, you know, you want someone that knows what you're going through, then this is your lady, because she's going to be doing big things on this world. I can just see it. Cannot wait to watch your journey. So thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. It was brilliant. I loved it. Thank you for being so open and sharing your story. I know it's always quite vulnerable, but, you know, when you've done the healing, it's amazing when you've actually done healing around something. It's actually not hard. You think it is, but it's that emotional attachment, baby. Congratulations on coming through to this by now. Yeah, you're incredible. You really, really are.
Thanks.
So thank you for watching or listening as well to another beautiful episode of the Art of Quantum Healing. I look forward to next week's episode. Thanks, beautiful.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Make sure to check out all the show notes of today's episode on my website by clicking on the link in the description. Also, make sure to join my newsletter to receive a free guided meditation to help you feel grounded throughout your day. Finally, make sure to subscribe to my channel and help us grow the community by sharing it with your friends. I am your host, Lisa Nadler, and this is the Art of Quantum Healing.